So I haven't really spoke about these controllers on the channel for a little while, and I feel like it's time we should. Let's talk about the Gamesir G7 SE and HE. And after owning these controllers for about 8 months now, how they're holding up. Now, just based on the title, I've given you the impression that one of these controllers is better than the other, but it's not supposed to be that way. My personal preference is the Gamesir G7 SE. But when you take a look at the specs of both controllers, they are pretty much the same thing with one or two minor differences. The G7 HE has micro switch buttons and a rubber textured grip on the back, whereas the G7 SE has membrane buttons.
Ugh. What's that, brother?
And doesn't come with a rubber texture grip on the back. Although the G7 SE does have button lock for the 2 extra buttons on the back, and the G7 HE does not have that for some reason. Other than that, on paper, these controllers are exactly the same. Both are officially licensed Xbox controllers, so you can use them on your Xbox Series S and Series X, as well as PC if you want. Both are wired controllers, both come with Hall effect analog sticks, and they are the same analog sticks. Both come with Hall effect triggers with a hair trigger mode. Both come with 2 remappable buttons on the back. Both have a headphone jack. Both support up to a 1000 Hz polling rate. Both use the exact same software to customize and configure the controllers. Both controllers have the same version of software and are updated at the exact same time as each other. And both controllers are the exact same shape, size, dimensions, ergonomics, feel, and both have removable magnetic faceplates, and they are interchangeable with one another, so I can take the faceplate from the G7 HE and put it on the SE. So, with that being said, why is the G7 SE my favorite, or why do I think it's better? Well, I can only partially answer that question. The G7 SE, when I'm using it on my Xbox, feels better. I have no evidence as to why. The G7 SE has got a lot more use under its belt.
And today we're going to be doing something none of you have ever done before. So watch this and learn.
So whether it's just that I haven't worn in the analog sticks yet, I don't know. But the Hall effect sticks in the G7 HE, or the one that I've got anyway, just feels a little bit more floaty. The biggest problem with Hall effect sticks compared to potentiometers or Alps joysticks most commonly is the simple fact that they're just not as precise. Because of the way that they work, because it's not physically detecting the input, it's just going off of 2 magnets and their distance between each other. It's a bit like the difference between riding a skateboard and a hoverboard. The hoverboard will just feel a little bit disconnected from the ground. And that's exactly how Hall effect sticks feel compared to potentiometers. Now, some controller manufacturers like Mojon and Gamesir themselves as well are one step ahead by incorporating TMR sticks. However, currently there is not an Xbox licensed controller that has TMR sticks. Otherwise, that is the option that I'd go for, because these Hall effect sticks, as good as they are, you just can't ignore the fact that they're Hall effect sticks. Now, again, for reasons I can't explain, the ones on the G7 SE just feel better. They're just a little bit less floaty. I don't know why. Now, one thing to mention before we go any further is that I did update the G7 HE to the very latest version of software, which is version 6.40. I did this because this controller is the one that I intended to use on my Xbox console, whereas the SE was one that I was going to dedicate to using on PC. The only reason for that is just simply so that I could keep one controller set at 1000 Hz and then the other controller set at 500 Hz for use on the Xbox. And so that I didn't have to keep plugging it into the PC to keep switching the polling rate and messing around with settings and all that kind of thing. So that's the only reason that I did it. However, whether it's something to do with the version of software, I don't know. The G7 SE is still on version 6.33 or something like that, I think. I can't remember exactly. But I'm scared to death to update it just in case that is the problem with the G7 HE. It's been so long now that I've completely forgot. In fact, these controllers I've not even been using either of them for the past couple of months, just simply because when playing on PC, I'm using the Gamesir Cyclone 2 with the TMR sticks. And just to set the record straight, the Cyclone 2 is a better controller than both of these in almost every way possible. The only reason that these controllers are so popular and so highly spoke of is because they are probably the best you can get in terms of officially licensed Xbox controllers. So controllers that will natively just plug into your Xbox and work. And before you comment that the Razer Wolverine V3 is better than both of these and officially licensed for Xbox, you should probably go watch my review on that one before you comment that, because I've already tested it, and these are still better and cheaper, and you'll probably never see another Razer product on this channel ever again. But moving on, I did have an issue with the triggers on the G7HE originally, but overall the controller felt fine in game. Basically, I couldn't calibrate the triggers, and it had this kind of on and off trigger issue where it would activate and deactivate at wrong times and things like that, and that was actually fixed. And overall, the controller just feels more stable and more responsive in the new update. And also what the update did is it allowed you to enable 500 Hz on the G7HE, plug it into your Xbox, and you can still use the headphone jack. Whereas on older versions of software, setting it to anything above 250 Hz would disable the headphone jack. Also, what I did really like about the controller was its tactile micro switch buttons. I am a huge fan of those, although I just don't like the D-pad. Just requires more than necessary force to press. It just feels a little bit stiff. And having to press the D-pad like hundreds of times in certain games, I imagine that would not be very healthy. The D-pad that is just membrane on the G7 SE is better, and it's perfectly fine. There's no complaints. It doesn't need micro switches in there. In fact, if I was to build my own controller, which potentially I may do in the very near future, I wouldn't even have micro switch buttons on the face of the controller. I would just stick to membrane, and then I'd probably just use the tactile micro switches for things like the triggers and the bumpers, and maybe the buttons on the back of the controller as well. But personally, a membrane D-pad and membrane face buttons is perfectly fine. Like, if something's not broken, why fix it? But yeah, there's just something else that I can't put my finger on. The rubber texture grip on the back of the G7HE definitely is a bonus, although it's not make or break. So it doesn't make this one you should go for over the SE just automatically, just because it's got a bit of rubber grip on the back of it. Because on the G7 SE, what I did was I was able to pick up some adhesive rubber textured grip for the back of it, and they're on Amazon. I forget who makes them now, but I will try and dig the link out and pop that in the description. But these, you can buy these for about $10, and it fits right on. They're specifically cut out to perfectly fit the G7 SE. It does actually come with a full kit, so it comes with all the front and everything. However, almost dropped that thing. However, today's just not my day. I didn't feel like keeping that on. I put it on and I tested it out, but I felt like it was a bit overkill. You only really need the grip on the back, if I'm honest. On the face of the controller, you kind of need your thumb right at the bottom where it's on your palm. You kind of need that to be able to slide around a little bit for aiming. So I took them off the front and just kept the ones on the back because that's all I really needed. Don't get me wrong, the G7 SE is a great controller. However, all the features that comes with both of these controllers isn't exactly something wildly special. There are so many controllers in the less than $50 bracket now that come with all of these features and more, including a controller that I'm reviewing currently from Mojon, which is just $30, and it's still got more features than both of these controllers. However, the big thing about these, again, is the fact that they are officially licensed for Xbox. That's the selling point. That's what probably adds an extra like $25 onto the cost price of these things, because of all the work that Gamesir have had to put into the firmware, the software and everything to get them officially licensed. Now back to the polling rates, because this is a big one, and I am just going to get right to the point with you here, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. I just kind of need you to trust me, because just think about all the hours that you've spent researching, looking up Reddit forums, trying to find research and data and input latency tests. Think about all those hours that you've wasted. And as convinced as you are right now that you can use either of these controllers with 1000 Hz enabled on your Xbox controller, on your Xbox console, and it will actually give you a lower input latency, how confident are you? Because I would love to say I'm very confident and the controllers are better when set to 1000 Hz on Xbox. However, my hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay says otherwise. Now, for the last 2 weeks, I've been playing Black Ops 6 rank play on Xbox console, basically to avoid all the PC hackers and everything else. And I've been using the Gamesir G7 SE as that's my favorite. Just generally feels better, as I've mentioned, but I've been using it set at 250 hertz. Now, at first, maybe it felt a little bit slower, but after playing for like 40 hours now, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't feel the need to up the polling rate to anything higher. It seems that this 1000 hertz polling rate idea has just sent everybody into this frenzy. People are now pitted against each other, and just like in my comments on previous videos, I've had people coming at me saying no, that I'm wrong, that you can use the 1000 hertz on Xbox. When I tell you you can or cannot do something, it's because that's what the manufacturer of the product have told me. Gamesir have told me directly, no, the option for 1000 hertz has been removed from Xbox. And they also explicitly said that if you set the controller to 1000 hertz in the PC app, then plugged it into your Xbox, it would not have a polling rate of 1000 hertz. The reason that Gamesir are saying that to me is because Microsoft has said to them, disable the 1000 hertz option on consoles. In fact, all the options are disabled on consoles. If you plug it just straight into your Xbox set at 250 hertz, you will not be able to change that. There's no other options, only on PC. Now, it seems at the moment that you can connect it to your PC, enable a 500 hertz, then plug it into your Xbox and it works. And from some people's testing, there has been a lower latency, but because of the testing methods on Xbox, it's not quite as simple as PC. On PC, you can find out the input latency of something quite easily. There's some very, very good tools out there, but you don't get that on Xbox. Plus, you're not taking into account the system latency. You can't see things like jitter or fluctuations or minimum or maximum latencies. You can't see any of that. From the testing methods of the likes of the Photo Techie, for example, the work he's done is phenomenal. He's put so much time and effort into his data and his videos, and I give him all the credit in the world. But I can't take his word that something is faster or the latency is lower or anything like that, simply because as much as he is trying to use a method that works for him and gets him the information that he needs, it's not what I'm looking for. I don't care if this controller has a polling rate of 1000 hertz if every so often the latency spikes to like 10 milliseconds. And with all the methods that I've found online so far from everybody else, there's no way of testing that. And there's something off about this controller. When using it in 500 hertz on Xbox, there's something off about it. I've tested both controllers on 1000 hertz on Xbox as well. Personally, I didn't feel any difference whatsoever, and I was also having issues with the HE at the time on the older version of software, so I didn't know if potentially 1000 hertz was causing those issues or making them worse. But I didn't feel the controls were faster. I didn't feel like I was benefiting, and I don't feel like you will either. So this one I've been testing it out on 500 hertz. That one I've been testing it on 250 hertz. This one, something still feels off about it. The SE, as much as it's not as fast as plugging it into my PC, it's good enough. And it's faster than official Xbox controllers. You are forgetting that the controllers that come with the Xbox console, including the nearly $200 Elite Series 2, has a polling rate of half these at 125 hertz. And the input latency of the buttons, the analog sticks, everything is sometimes as high as 12 milliseconds. So to go from that to using these on 250 hertz at 4 milliseconds is night and day difference. That's such a huge difference. Now going from 4 milliseconds to 2 milliseconds, that's less of a jump. That's less of an improvement. I feel like you don't need to worry about that. Yes, I will always use controllers on 1000 hertz where applicable. But when things start to get complicated with these two, just keep it simple. Just stick it on 250 hertz and just play. That's my take on it. If you plug it into your PC, by all means, go crazy. But if you are just playing on PC and you don't play on Xbox console, you shouldn't be buying either of these controllers anyway, because there's better ones out there, such as the Mojon Blitz 2, the EasySMX X20. There are so many better options. The Vader 4 Pro, for example, is probably a better controller than both of these, on PC though. Now, I don't have to give you permission to tell me what you think in the comments, because you're going to do that anyway, but your opinions are always welcome. And regardless whether we actually agree on things or not, I hope that we can stay friends and that you'll hit subscribe down below and turn on notifications so you don't miss a future upload or when we go live. Also, I almost forgot, just want to throw this out there, the Hall effect sticks in these controllers are definitely a lot better than what you can get out there. So even compared to controllers for PC only with Hall effect sticks, these are still some of the best. So I guess if you do use this just solely on PC, that's not such a bad thing because they are still really good controllers, and especially for the money. So just wanted to mention that. And don't forget, a winner for our controller giveaways are always pulled out the bag live on stream. So come along if you want the opportunity to get your name in for those. We do give away controllers completely for free, totally at random, to anyone subscribed to the channel. But that's it from me today. Go kick some ass, and we'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.